Junior Johnson, the NASCAR driver and moonshiner. Robert Glenn Johnson Jr., better known as Junior Johnson, was an American NASCAR driver of the 1950s and 60s. He won a total of 50 NASCAR races in his career before retiring in 1966. In the 70s and 80s, he became a NASCAR racing team owner, winning the NASCAR championship. He also produced a line of fried pork skins and country ham. He is also credited as the first to use the drafting technique in stock car racing. He was nicknamed the Last American Hero, and his autobiography is the same name as well. In May 2007, Johnson teamed with the Piedmont Distilleries of Madison, North Carolina, to introduce the company's second moonshine product called Midnight Moon Moonshine. Johnson was born in Rondon, North Carolina. He was the fourth of 7 children of Laura Bell and Robert Glenn Johnson Sr. His family is of the Ulster Scots descent and settled in the foothills of North Carolina in the early 1600s. The Johnson family was involved in the whiskey business before he was born. His maternal great-grandfather served as the second highest-ranking Confederate general in North Carolina. Johnson's father, a lifelong bootlegger, spent nearly 20 of his 63 years in prison, as their house was frequently raided by revenue agents. Junior was arrested and spent 1 year in prison in Ohio in 1956 to 57 for having an illegal steal, although he was never caught in his many years of transporting bootleg liquor at high speed. In 1955, Johnson began his career as a NASCAR driver in his first full season. He won 5 races and finished 6th in the 1955 NASCAR Grand National Points standings. In 1958, Johnson won 6 races. In 1959, Johnson won 5 more NASCAR Grand National races. By this time, he was regarded as one of the best short track racers in the sport. His first win at Superspeedway came at the Daytona 500 in 1960. Johnson and his crew chief, Ray Fox, were practicing for the race, trying to figure out how to increase their speed, which was 22 miles per hour slower than that of the top cars in the race. During a test run, a faster car passed Johnson. He noticed that when he moved behind that car, his own car's speed increased because of the faster car slipstream. Johnson was then able to stay close behind the other car until the final lap of the test run, when he used the slipstream effect to slingshot past it. By using this technique, Johnson went on to win the 1960 Daytona 500. Despite that, his car was slower than the others in the field. Johnson's technique was quickly adopted by other drivers, and his practice of drafting has become a common tactic in NASCAR races today. In 1963, Johnson had a 2-lap lead in the World 600 at Charlotte before a Spectre threw a bottle onto the track and caused a crash. Johnson suffered only minor injuries. He retired as a driver in 1966. In his career, Johnson claimed 50 victories, 11 at major speedway races. Johnson was a master of dirt track racing. The 2 best drivers I've ever competed against on dirt are Junior Johnson and Dick Hutcherson, said 2-time NASCAR champion Ned Jarrett. Johnson was briefly married in 1949 to Mary Gary. His marriage to childhood sweetheart Flossie Clark ended in divorce in 1992. They were legally married in 1975, although they had been together since the early 1950s. His marriage to Lisa Day in 1992 resulted in two children, daughter Meredith Susan and son Robert Glenn Johnson III, both of whom attended Duke University. Johnson built a new home for his family in 1997, selling in 2020 because of poor health. He resided in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time of his death in 2019. Until Flossie's death on April 9, 2020, she still resided in the family home built by Junior in 1964, right next to Johnson's old Ingle Hollow race shop, which she kept as part of the divorce settlement. On December 26, 1986, President Ronald Reagan granted Johnson a presidential pardon for his 1956 moonshining conviction. In response to the pardon, which restored his right to vote, Johnson said, "I could not have imagined anything better." In the mid-1960s, writer Tom Wolfe researched and wrote an article about Johnson. Published in March 1965 in Esquire and reprinted in Wolfe's The Candy-Colored Tangerine Flake Streamline Baby. This was eventually reprinted in the Best American Sports Writing of the Century. The article, originally entitled Great Balls of Fire, turned Johnson into a national celebrity and led to fame beyond the circle of NASCAR fans. In turn, the article was made into a 1973 movie based on Johnson's career as a NASCAR driver and moonshiner. Jeff Bridges starred as a fictional Johnson, and Johnson himself served as a technical advisor for the film. The movie was critically acclaimed and featured the Jim Croce hit song, "I Got a Name." In May of 2007, Johnson teamed with Piedmont Distilleries to introduce the company's second moonshine product, called Midnight Moon Moonshine. Johnson became part owner of Piedmont Distillers, the only legal distiller in North Carolina at the time. Piedmont Distillers is located in Madison, North Carolina, in the town's former train station built in 1915. Midnight Moon follows the Johnson's family generations' old tradition of making moonshine and is available in all 50 states. Every batch is produced in an authentic copper still and handcrafted in small batches. The shine is a legal version of his locally famous family recipe and is available in 8 varieties that range from 70 to 100 proof. Johnson sadly passed at a hospice care facility in Charlotte, North Carolina on December 20, 2019 at the age of 88. He also had Alzheimer's at the time. Although Junior Johnson was born in the Depression and grew up poor in Wilkes County, he did not endure a deprived childhood. His father, Robert Glenn Johnson Sr., was often gone for years at a time, serving his latest prison term for moonshining. Except for that, Junior had a comfortable upbringing, because in spite of his drawbacks, moonshining was a lucrative trade. We had the first combine in Wilkes County, and we had the first lots, and I think we were the first family that had ever had an inside bathroom in our area, Junior says. Our family wasn't rich, but we was probably considered to be rich at that time by other people. Whiskey, of course, has been a staple in American life since European settlers arrived here more than 4 centuries ago. The mountains of North Carolina were already well settled when distillers in western Pennsylvania rose up in 1794 to protest a tax on whiskey passed by the new and cash-poor American government. President George Washington sent troops to the Whiskey Rebellion, forcing hundreds of Pennsylvanian distillers to flee. Many went south into the Appalachian wilderness and out of the reach of the tax man. Whiskey making became a part of southern mountain life. Eventually, so did the revenuers. When Robert Glenn Johnson Jr. was born on June 28, 1931, it was illegal to own, sell, or drink alcoholic beverages in the United States. He was 2 when Prohibition was repealed in December 1933 after 12 years. Prohibition had not stopped Junior's father from making whiskey, and neither would the new federal tax law that followed its repeal. Nothing short of old age, in fact, ever stopped Glenn Johnson from making whiskey. I believe he would have done it for nothing, says Junior. It was a way of life. He just loved it. For the Johnson family, it was far more than building a little still and cooking some mash to earn a few extra dollars. For most of his life, when he wasn't in prison, Glenn Johnson was the kingpin moonshiner of Wilkes County. And when agents of Internal Revenue Service's new alcohol tax unit raided Glenn Johnson's house on April 27, 1935, what they found cemented Johnson's reputation. The second floor of the 2-story wood frame house in Engle Hollow was jammed packed with cases of moonshine. Cardboard boxes, each holding 6 one-gallon jars of moonshine, were stacked by the hundreds in the upstairs bedrooms. I was about 4, and my older brother Fred was about 5.5, recalls Junior. The whole upstairs of my daddy's house was cocked full of whiskey, and the agents had nailed some planks to the steps, and they would bring each case to the top of the steps and slide them down them steps. And me and my brother started jumping on them cases and riding them down to the bottom of the steps. And we would run back up the stairs and jump on another case and ride it down too. I remember that very distinctly, and after a while they got tired of us being in their way, but we was pretty raw kids, so we probably told them what we thought of them. The ATU agents removed 7,100 gallons of illegal whiskey from the Johnson's house. Just, wow, that's a lot of whiskey. It's kind of cool though. Legend has it that Junior's mother cooked the agents a big country dinner as they emptied her house of whiskey. Junior swears it's true, and his ex-wife Flossie doesn't doubt it. When people came, they were just asked to eat, she says. The purpose of the visit apparently just didn't matter. Although no one was keeping score, the 1935 bust at Glenn Johnson's house is considered by a number of moonshine authorities as the largest inland seizure of illegal whiskey in the history of the United States. And after neatly stacking the 1,113 cases outside the Johnsons' home, the agents proceeded to empty them, dump the whiskey, and then break the jars, all 6,678 of them, in the Johnsons' front yard. I would be so mad. So mad. I definitely wouldn't have made them dinner. Hats off to her, but I definitely would not have made them dinner. Anyways, after the agents left, resourceful friends and relatives scrambled to salvage the liquor that had been poured out in their yard. Some of the neighbors salvaged several hundreds of gallons, says Johnson. It took 2 or 3 weeks to clean up the glass, he remembers. Glenn Johnson had fled before the raid. He became a fugitive on the run for about 8 months before finally turning himself in. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. He'd been a rich man if he'd gotten away with that, says former Wilkes County bootlegger Thurmond Brown, a lifelong friend of Junior's. The price of liquor was low at the time, you see, and he was buying it and storing it, waiting for the price to go up. He borrowed money to buy it. So he ran out of his own money and borrowed money to do this. Trying to figure out if that's the smartest thing I've heard or the craziest. I don't know. Anyways, so as a teenager, school was not high on Junior's list of priorities. He quit after 8th grade, having advanced 4 grades further than his father. Johnson's preoccupation, other than cars, was baseball. His team was the New York Yankees, and his dream was to become a major league pitcher. He spent several hours throwing a ball against the family barn and developed a wicked repertoire of pitches. "I pitch a ball just like I raced," he said in a 1991 interview. "I'd put 'em on their pants." But one day, around the end of World War II, he was on a tractor, acting a fool, just playing around, cutting up, spinning around, fun stuff we can do on a tractor. But he cut the wheel too sharp and the tractor tipped. He jumped as it went over, but it rolled onto his arm. He said, "I couldn't really throw a ball after that. It destroyed whatever it took to throw a ball." So, my question is, was it worth tractor playtime or not? I believe so. I believe it was worth it. But anywho, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have on Mr. Junior Johnson today. Thank y'all for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and y'all have a wonderful day.
All of this is research filmed on the internet.